Apple's slogan is "Think Different," and ever since their inception, they have done just that. Apple's co-founder Steve Jobs, along with other influential Apple employees like Johnny Ive, have released some brilliant products over the years that have drastically changed the consumer electronics market. In my opinion, some of those products have had a bigger influence on the market than others, so here are, in no particular order, the top 6 Apple products that I believe changed the consumer electronics market as we know it. Number 1 is the original Macintosh. While it wasn't super successful when it was released in 1984, two features that are fundamental in almost every personal computer today made their first mainstream appearance in that Macintosh, and those are the mouse and the graphical user interface, or GUI. How would you like it if still today, when you turned your computer on, you were greeted by a black screen or a command line instead of icons, windows, and a cursor to navigate with? The successful implementation of the GUI and a pointing tool to go with it made the idea of personal computing a lot less intimidating to the mainstream market. Instead of having to memorize the commands to launch your applications, you could just click on the icons on the desktop and they would launch. It seems trivial now, but back then that was revolutionary. The second product I want to talk about was the next significant leap in the Macintosh series, the iMac. When this thing came to market in 1988, people didn't know what hit them. This was the first time a computer was actually visually appealing. Before, when you thought of computers, you would imagine a black or beige plastic box that was purely utilitarian and possessed no uniqueness aesthetically. The iMac changed that. The back shell of the iMac was a blue translucent plastic that allowed you to see through to the components on the inside. Steve Jobs was known for being extremely meticulous with having a very attractive, clean, and tidy inside to all of his computers, and that's something that you see in every computer today, and that's why today in today's market, if you get a computer and you look on the inside, it looks visually appealing. That is a trend that Steve Jobs started with the iMac. Product number 3 is the iPod. I'm sure a lot of you already saw this one coming, but it goes without saying that the iPod changed the music industry forever. The first iPod came out in 2001 during a time of uncertainty in the music industry. Records and labels were busy fighting piracy sites like Napster, and they were losing unprecedented amount of money each year. At first, the iPod appeared to be yet another threat to the music industry because it could hold 1,000 songs and play back 10 hours of music, making it easier for people who downloaded music illegally to take it with them on the go. But this didn't happen because Apple sold the iPod with another one of their products, which leads me to my number 4 product, iTunes. The main problem with Napster and other competitor sites was that they were very difficult to use. Their user interface was complicated and not intuitive at all. Apple thought that if they gave people a very clean user interface that was easy to learn, people would be more willing to switch even if they had to pay for the music once again. Apple was right about this. iTunes proceeded to dominate music sales, and it left other mediums like CDs and vinyls in the dust. And of course, other companies tried to follow suit and create their own music sales platform like the Google Play Store, but none are quite as renowned as iTunes. Now, since we're talking about Apple's mobile electronics, it would only make sense to mention my 5th revolutionary Apple product, the iPhone. When we think of smartphones today, no matter what the brand, a very similar design comes to mind. A large black touchscreen display with very few scatter buttons on the sides and front. In 2007, people couldn't believe their eyes when this came out. People were used to smartphones being cheap, plasticky, having cheap plasticky buttons all over them, and maybe even a stylus to use a very unresponsive touchscreen, but the iPhone changed all of that. The iPhone came with a multi-touch display. Steve Jobs famously said that they will not be including a stylus with their phone because everyone should use the best stylus that they already have, their finger. As Jobs mentioned in his keynotes, keyboards are impractical on a mobile device because if you thought of a new feature down the road, you couldn't just implement it because there would be a better optimal button layout and you couldn't change a physical keyboard button on units that were already sold, but with a software keyboard, you could. The beauty of Apple's multi-touch screen on the iPhone was that you could change the user interface to whatever was perfect for the task at hand. If someone was typing an email or a text, the keyboard would appear. But if they were just browsing the internet, the keyboard would disappear because there is no reason for it to occupy the screen real estate. When we see a large touchscreen display in every smartphone today, we don't think twice about it, but it's really a revolutionary user interface that changed the smartphone market forever thanks to Apple. And that brings me to my 6th and final revolutionary Apple product, Siri. Siri, if you don't know, which I actually didn't, stands for Speech Interpretation and Recognition Interface. It was first released on the iPhone 4S, and at that time it was still relatively crude with a robot-sounding voice and a very limited number of commands that you could ask it to do. Since then, Siri has evolved into an extremely advanced virtual assistant of sorts that can do things like compose a text, or check the weather, or check the score of your favorite sports team. And it's also saturated into Apple's other product lines like the iPod Touch, iPad, Apple TV, and it's a fundamental piece of the Apple Watch OS. If you're seeing a trend here, other companies started to follow suit and create their own virtual assistants of sorts, like Google's Google Now and Microsoft's Cortana, but depending on who you ask, different ones will be the leader. Some people say Siri's the best, some people say Google Now's the best, even some people believe Cortana's the best. But what's important is that Siri started that entire trend, and we wouldn't have any of them if we didn't have Siri first. Well, that about wraps this video up. I hope, like me, you gained a little bit of newfound respect for a company that has changed the face of tech forever, and I hope that you think twice about blindly supporting or criticizing a company based on a single product that you may not like. Thank you for watching, subscribe for more content, and as always, stay classy.